My name is Paul Harrison. I'm 69 years old. Last Sunday, my daughter-in-law Megan informed me that I wasn't welcome for Christmas. She said with a smile that looked like it was carved from ice, "We're just having real family this year, Paul. You understand?" I watched my son Brian stare at the floor, too weak to meet my eyes. I just nodded. I told them I understood perfectly. I got into my old Ford, drove around the corner, and made one phone call. By New Year's, the bank, or rather the holding company they didn't know I owned, would be foreclosing on their $1 million house. Before I tell you how I did it and why they deserved every second of it, let me know in the comments where you're listening to this story from. And if you've ever had to set a hard boundary with family who thought you were weak, hit that like and subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this ends. The engine of my 2014 Ford grumbled a little as I pulled into their driveway. It's an honest truck. Reliable? But parked in front of Brian's custom-built $1.2 million modern monstrosity, it looked like a stray dog at a show. The house was all white marble and glass, so clean and sterile, it felt more like a high-end clinic than a home. I grabbed the tin of oatmeal raisin cookies from the passenger seat. My late wife Diane always said they were the one thing I made better than she did. I let myself in. "Brian, Megan, Dad's here." The air smelled like some expensive chemical ocean mist spray, not like food, not like a home. Brian rushed out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He looked stressed. "Hey, Dad, you made it." He gave me a hug, the kind that's all shoulders and pats over before it begins. Megan was exactly where I expected to find her, sprawled on a white sofa that cost more than my first car flipping through Vogue living. She didn't look up. "Oh, Paul, you're here." Finally, she granted me a glance, her eyes immediately flicking to the cookie tin. "You brought cookies. How quaint." I sat on the chair. She didn't gesture to the one furthest from the fireplace. It was clear I was an interruption to her evening. "So?" I started trying to be cheerful, getting ready for the holidays. This opened the floodgates. Megan launched into a monologue. It wasn't about family. It was about logistics. It was a performance. "It's going to be perfect," she declared, tapping a pen against the magazine. "The caterers from L'Etoile are handling the food. I've secured 6 bottles of the 09 Dom." She said 09 Dom like it was a person she'd rescued. "And of course, Mom and Dad are flying in from Florida on the 22nd. We're so excited. It's been ages." I knew for a fact they'd seen them last month for a golf weekend, but Megan loved manufacturing drama. We just want everything to be perfect for them. They're used to a certain standard, you know. I looked at Brian. He just nodded along, a little bobblehead in a $500 sweater. "It'll be great, Dad." "Beverly and Richard? Well, they're really looking forward to it." He said looking forward to, but his eyes screamed exhausted. He looked like a man drowning in his own life. Megan continued oblivious. "The theme is winter white and gold. We're having a string quartet for the Christmas Eve dinner. Just something small and tasteful." I nodded, playing my part. The poor old dad. The simpleton. The man who wouldn't know Dom Perignon from ginger ale. This was the role they had assigned me, and for years I had played it perfectly. It was easier. It kept the peace. It let me observe. And I had been observing everything. When Megan finally paused for air, I asked my question. "It all sounds wonderful. What can I bring? Maybe my sweet potato casserole?" "You always loved that, Brian." The air in the room didn't just get quiet. It died. Megan stopped tapping her pen. She set the magazine down slowly, deliberately. She looked at Brian. It was a sharp, quick glance, like a knife flicking open. My son, my 38-year-old son, immediately looked down at the floor. He became intensely interested in the grout between the marble tiles, as if it held the secrets of the universe. That's when I knew. "Paul," Megan began, and her voice shifted. It was that syrupy, patronizing tone she used when she was about to deliver an insult wrapped in a favor. About that, we talked it over. This meant she had decided. And this year we're doing something different, a little more private. I just watched her. With Mom and Dad flying all this way, so, she continued, we just want a really quiet, intimate Christmas. You understand? Just our immediate family. Immediate family. The words landed like stones. I, the man who had raised the man sitting right there, was not immediate family. I was, an optional extra. A second-tier relative. I kept my eyes locked on Brian. He wouldn't look up. Brian, I asked, my voice quiet. He flinched. Dad, it's just, Beverly and Richard. They haven't had a real Christmas with us since, it's just this one time. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. My son dismissing 40 years of my life, dismissing our Christmases as not a big deal. Megan, seeing Brian falter, swooped in. It's not that you're totally excluded, Paul, she said, as if she were being incredibly generous. You are more than welcome to stop by on Boxing Day. The 26th, to pick up your present. She smiled. Just make sure to call first. We'll probably be busy. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I let the insult hang in the air, let it fill the cold, sterile room. I saw Brian shift uncomfortably. He knew this was wrong. He knew it was cruel. But he was too weak, too terrified of his wife to do anything about it. And then I smiled. It wasn't a sad smile. It wasn't an angry smile. It was a cold, sharp, empty smile. The kind of smile I used to use in boardrooms right before I dismantled an opponent's entire argument. They mistook it for acceptance. They thought I was defeated. I understand, I said. My voice was perfectly calm. No, really, I get it. Family is the most important thing. You have to do what's right for your immediate family. I stood up. I reached for my old worn jacket, the one Megan hated, the one she said smelled like mothballs and retirement. But, Dad, the cookies, Brian stammered, pointing at the tin. Oh, that's all right, I said, picking it up. I'll take them home, no sense letting them go to waste. I walked to the door. You two have a wonderful private Christmas. I walked out into the cold December air. I got into my 10-year-old Ford. The engine started with its familiar, comforting rumble. I drove away slowly. I could see Megan in the window, already back to her magazine, dismissing me from her life as easily as flipping a page. I drove 5 blocks. I turned a corner. I pulled over to the curb under the shadow of a leafless oak tree. The smile vanished. My face felt like it was carved from granite. I sat there for 1 full minute. The image of my son staring at the floor, too cowardly to defend his own father, burned into my mind. I picked up my phone. Not the simple flip phone I usually carried that was part of the act. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the encrypted smartphone. I scrolled to a single contact. It rang once. Peterson. His voice was as always clipped and professional. It's me, Paul. Paul, I was wondering when you'd call. How was dinner? Illuminating, I said. It's time. Activate the demand note on the Harrison bond. Peterson was silent for a beat. Are you sure, Paul? That's the final move. Once that bell is rung, you can't unring it. They just told me I'm not welcome for Christmas, Peterson. They're embarrassed by me. Ring the bell. Very good, Peterson said. I could almost hear him smile. $450,000. Due in full in 30 days. The notice will be served tomorrow morning. Thank you, I said. And Peterson, Merry Christmas. I hung up, put the car in gear, and drove home to my quiet apartment, feeling warmer than I had all night. I sat there in the truck, the engine's quiet rumble the only sound. The anger I felt was cold, not hot. It was the sharp, clean anger of a final calculation. My mind went back 5 years to the day Brian first brought her home. Megan. She wasn't from money, not really. Her parents, Richard and Beverly, were new money, the worst kind, obsessed with proving they had it. They lived in a gaudy McMansion in Florida and measured their worth by the brand names on their clothes. Megan learned that lesson well. From the moment she met Brian, she saw him not as a man, but as a project, a fixer-upper. He was a good, simple manager at a decent company. He was happy. He drove a reliable sedan. He lived in a comfortable condo. That wasn't good enough for her. First, it was the car. His perfectly fine sedan didn't project success, so she pushed him into leasing a BMW he couldn't afford. The payments were crippling. Then it was the country club. All the important people are members, Brian. You have to network. Another $2,000 a month for a membership he barely used, just so she could post pictures from the pool. Then came the house. This glass and marble box. $1.2 million. Brian's salary, even as a manager, was stretched to the breaking point. I knew he was drowning. I could see the panic behind his eyes every time a bill came. He was working 60-hour weeks, not for a promotion, but just to tread water, just to keep up with the lifestyle she demanded. And my son Brian, he's a good kid. He was always a good kid, but he's weak in a way I never was. He craves approval. He thinks these shallow, materialistic people are better than him, better than us. He was so desperate for the love of this woman that he was willing to destroy himself financially to get it. And Megan. She didn't just dislike me. She despised me. I wasn't just an embarrassing old father-in-law. I was a threat to her brand. My old truck, my simple 2-bedroom apartment, my flannel shirts, my refusal to play the game. Every part of my existence was a reminder of the middle-class life she was clawing her way out of. She didn't want me around, reminding her and reminding Brian of a simpler, more honest way of living. She wasn't just ungrateful. She was an infection. She had infected my son, made him ashamed of who he was and where he came from, made him so weak he couldn't even look his own father in the eye while his wife kicked me out of Christmas. I stared at the dark street. Brian was sacrificing his entire financial future, his integrity, his family, for a woman who just told me I wasn't welcome. He was drowning for her, and she had just spit in the face of the man who held the lifeline. Brian has no idea about any of this. He thinks I'm just Paul Harrison, the retired mechanical engineer, a man who lives on a fixed pension, Social Security, and whatever meager savings he scraped together over a 40-year career. He sees my small 2-bedroom apartment, my old truck, my flannel shirts, and he sees a man who is comfortable, but simple, limited. He doesn't know the truth. He never knew the truth about his mother. My Diane. She's been gone 20 years, but she is the architect of all of this. Diane didn't just come from a good family. She came from old money. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't buy yachts but owns the land the marina is built on. It wasn't a dynasty, but it was significant. When she passed, she left me her portfolio. It wasn't a staggering amount, not at first, but it was a seed. I was a good engineer. I understood systems, stress points, leverage, but I was a brilliant investor. While Brian was growing up, while I was taking him to Little League and helping him with his homework, I was also teaching myself international finance. While he thought I was reading popular mechanics, I was actually studying Japanese market trends and early tech startups. I took that seed Diane left me, and over 30 years, I cultivated it in silence. I diversified. I invested. I multiplied. I built an empire quietly, brick by brick, while living in that same simple apartment. I never told Brian. Why would I? I'd seen what unearned money did to Diane's family. It made them soft, entitled. It robbed them of ambition. I didn't want that for my son. I wanted him to build his own life. I wanted him to value hard work, to know the feel of a paycheck earned. I lived humbly to teach him humility. The irony is the lesson never stuck. He saw my simple life not as a choice but as a failure, a ceiling he was desperate to break through. And then 2 years ago, he finally broke. Megan's spending, the BMW, the club, the designer clothes, it all caught up to him. He was drowning in debt. And this house, this $1.2 million monument to his insecurity, was about to be foreclosed on. I knew he was in trouble. Peterson, my financial advisor, monitors everything. Brian was 90 days late. Bank of America was sending the final notices. He was too ashamed to come to me. After all, what could his poor old dad do, lend him a few thousand from his retirement? He was too proud to ask for what he thought was a small, useless handout. He never dreamed I could solve the whole problem. So I didn't offer. I didn't co-sign a new loan. I didn't write him a check. That would have been a bailout. It would have taught him nothing. It would have just been a reward for his weakness, for Megan's greed. I did something better. I did something smarter. I had Peterson draw up the papers. We created a new, completely anonymous LLC. I named it P&D Holdings, for Paul and Diane. It was our secret. P&D Holdings, this faceless entity, went to Bank of America. The bank was desperate to get this toxic, high-risk loan off its books. We didn't negotiate. We simply bought Brian's entire mortgage note in full. $450,000. Just like that, I became the bank. For the last 2 years, Brian and Megan have been writing their monthly mortgage check. They think it's going to Bank of America. They have no idea. Bank of America is just the servicer. They collect the check, take a small fee, and wire the rest of the money, their money, directly into an account at P&D Holdings. An account that I control. And the best part? The part that makes this whole thing a perfect closed loop of justice. I haven't even been keeping the money. Peterson has standing instructions. Every dollar they've paid me, every single cent of their principal and interest for 24 months has been rerouted. It's been funneled directly into a separate, locked trust fund. A fund I established for the grandchild I hoped they would one day have. A grandchild I hoped would be raised with better values. I am their bank. I am the man who holds the deed to their lives. I am the reason they sleep in that house. And they just kicked me out of Christmas. They didn't just insult a poor old man. They didn't just embarrass a lonely father-in-law. They spat in the face of their creditor. The one man on earth with the power to take everything away from them. And I just did. I didn't call Brian for a week. I let them sit with their decision. I let them enjoy the cold, sterile perfection of their immediate family Christmas plans. I imagined Megan was busy, probably ordering gold leaf napkins and complaining to the caterer that the champagne wasn't the right vintage. Let them. Let them build their perfect, shallow little snow globe. I, on the other hand, went to my workshop. This is my real home. Not the quiet apartment, but this dusty, cluttered garage space I rent downtown. It smells of cedar and sawdust and old oil. It's the only place I feel completely like myself. It's where I think. I didn't pace, I didn't worry, I worked. I had a new project. A grandfather clock. It's a complex piece. It requires patience. It requires precision. You can't rush it. Every gear, every tooth, every joint has to be perfect, measured to a fraction of a millimeter. If you're off by even a tiny margin, the whole mechanism fails. It won't keep time. So I focused. I spent that week measuring, cutting, and sanding a piece of solid cherry. I listened to the smooth rasp of the plane against the wood. I listened to the satisfying click as I tested the escapement mechanism. It was methodical. It was calm. And all the while I knew a piece of certified mail had been delivered to that $1.2 million house. I knew that somewhere across town, a legal-sized envelope was sitting on their marble countertop, ticking like a time bomb. I didn't need to call them. Their panic would call me. Megan wanted a quiet Christmas, just her real family. I was simply giving her a head start. Because I knew, with the certainty of a master craftsman, that by New Year's her entire world was going to be anything but quiet. It was going to be loud and messy and very, very real. So I let the silence stretch. I let the pressure build. I finished sanding the main housing for the clock, the wood smooth as glass under my hands. I was just waiting for the phone to ring, and I knew it would. It came on Friday, December 15th. I was in the workshop, meticulously fitting the anchor pallet to the escapement wheel of the clock. It's delicate work. It requires a steady hand. My phone, the simple flip phone, started vibrating on the workbench, rattling against a tin of wood screws. I looked at the caller ID. Brian. Right on schedule. I let it ring 3 times just to let the panic build. Then I picked up, wiping a bit of sawdust from my hands. Hey son, how are you? Dad. Dad. His voice was a full octave higher than usual. He was breathless, on the verge of tears. He sounded like he was hyperventilating. Brian, what's wrong? Slow down. I can't slow down. Dad, something terrible happened. I got a letter, a registered letter, from some law firm. I put the pallet down carefully. A law firm? What about the house, Dad? The mortgage. He was almost screaming now. They're saying they're calling the note. I don't even know what that means. Calling the note, son, that must be a mistake. Who sent it? Bank of America. No. That's the crazy part. It's not the bank. It's some holding company, P&D Holdings. I've never even heard of them. They said they own my mortgage now, and they're calling it in. I put on my best confused old man voice. P&D Holdings. I don't understand, Brian. How can they just do that? I don't know, Dad, he shrieked. But the letter says, it says I have 30 days. 30 days, Dad, or they foreclose. They want the whole thing, the entire amount. I paused, letting him twist. The entire amount. What, like the full mortgage? Yes. $450,000 by January 15th. Where am I supposed to get $450,000? We're going to lose the house and we're going to be on the street. I heard a muffled sound, like he was covering the phone, but I could still hear Megan's voice, sharp and hysterical, in the background. What do you mean you don't know? Call the bank. Call someone, Brian, fix it. He came back on the line, his voice a choked whisper. Dad, Megan, she's losing her mind. She's supposed to be finalizing the catering for the Christmas Eve party. Now this. Dad, she's going to kill me. My God, son, I said, injecting just the right amount of useless sympathy. That's terrible. I wish I could help, I truly do, but $450,000. You know I don't have that kind of money. My pension, my savings. It's just, I know, Dad, I know. He said, the fight going out of him replaced by pure, cold despair. I'm not asking. I don't know what to do. I'm ruined. My life is over. I let him sit in that despair for a few seconds. I let him feel the full weight of the marble walls and the BMW lease and the country club fees. I let him feel the cold. Then I offered him the next step. Brian, I said, as if an idea had just struck me. What about Megan's parents, Richard and Beverly? What about them? He sniffed. Well, they're flying up for Christmas. They always seem so well off. They're family, right? Have you talked to them? Maybe they could, help? There was a long silence on his end. I could hear him processing it. I don't know, Dad. He said, his voice small. Ask them for money after we just, excluded you for them. God, this is a nightmare. Son, I said, my voice firm but kind. You're about to lose your home. Megan is about to lose her perfect house. I don't think you have time to worry about pride. You don't have a choice. He took a shaky breath. Yeah, you're right. I have to call them. Maybe they can co-sign something. Or something. I have to try, oh God. Okay, I'll call them. I'll call you back, Dad. He hung up. I placed the flip phone back on the workbench. I picked up the palette and the escapement wheel. I held them up to the light, checking the alignment. Perfect. I went back to work on my clock, whistling softly. The trap was set. The bait was taken. And now I was about to sick the other rats on each other. I held the phone to my ear, listening to my son's world tear apart at the seams. I had to force my voice to sound shaky, to inject a note of elderly confusion. What was that, Brian? $450,000. I made sure to sound incredulous, like the number was too big for my simple retired mind to even comprehend. Yes. Dad, are you listening? 450,000, they want it all. The letter says it's from some P&D Holdings. I've never heard of them. I let a beat of silence pass as if I were struggling to remember. P&D. That doesn't make any sense. Son, that has to be a mistake. A scam, maybe. You've been paying Bank of America every month, haven't you? You've never missed a payment. That last part was a beautiful bit of salt in the wound. I knew he hadn't. I'd been collecting the checks. Of course I've paid. It doesn't matter, he yelled, and I could hear the sharp, hysterical edge in his voice. The letter says, the bondholder has demanded payment in full. It says they have the right. Dad, I'm going to lose the house. He was sobbing now, a full-on 38-year-old man weeping into the phone. Megan. God, Megan is going to kill me. She's in the other room finalizing the catering for the Christmas Eve party. She's ordering monogrammed ice sculptures. What am I supposed to tell her, that we're going to be homeless by New Year's? I had to clench my jaw to keep from smiling. Monogrammed ice sculptures. Son, calm down, I said, my voice full of fake fatherly concern. You just need to call the bank. Call Bank of America. They'll sort this out. It has to be a clerical error. I tried, he choked out. I called them. They said it's out of their hands. They said the mortgage note was sold 2 years ago, and they're just the loan servicer. They said the owner has every legal right. Dad, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I let him hang in that pure cold terror for a few more seconds. I let him feel the icy grip of real-world consequences. My God, Brian. I said, my voice low and heavy with feigned sadness. I wish I could help. I truly do, but $450,000. You know I don't have that kind of money. My pension, my savings. It's just, I know, Dad. I know. He said, the fight draining out of him, replaced by a hollow despair. I'm not asking you, I don't know who else to call. I'm ruined. My life is over. I let him sit in that pure, cold despair for a few seconds. I let him feel the icy grip of real-world consequences. Then I offered him the next step, the next piece of the puzzle I was building. Brian, I said, as if an idea had just reluctantly struck me. What? What about Megan's parents, Richard and Beverly? What about them? He sniffed. Well, I said, my voice hesitant. They're flying up for Christmas. They always seem so well off. They're family, right? Have you talked to them? Maybe they could Help. I... I don't know, Dad, he stammered. Ask them for money. After we just, you know, excluded you for them, God. This is a nightmare. Son, I said, my voice firm but kind. You're about to lose your home. Megan is about to lose her perfect house. I don't think you have time to worry about pride. You don't have a choice. He took a shaky breath. Yeah, you're right. I have to call them. Maybe they can co-sign something. Or something. I have to try. Oh, God. Okay. I'll call them. I'll call you back, Dad. He hung up. I placed the flip phone back on the workbench. I picked up the pallet and the escapement wheel. I held them up to the light, checking the alignment. Perfect. I went back to work on my clock, whistling softly. The trap was set. The bait was taken. And now I was about to sick the other rats on each other. Brian must have made the call because the next morning my flip phone rang. It was just after 9. I was in my workshop calibrating the weights for the grandfather clock. The number on the screen was one I didn't recognize. It was a Florida area code. I let it ring twice, then picked up. Hello! A short, sharp bark of a voice answered. Paul! Not Mr. Harrison. Not Paul, how are you? Just Paul. It was Richard, Megan's father. Richard, good morning. There's nothing good about it, he snapped. He sounded like a man who had just discovered a stain on his new carpet. Brian called us last night. He's hysterical, talking about losing his house. He has a problem. The way he said problem made it sound like a disease, something contagious that he was afraid of catching. Yes, he called me, I said, my voice quiet, playing the part of the concerned, slightly overwhelmed old man. It sounds terrible. I don't know what to do for him. I told him We're not interested in what you can't do. Richard cut me off. He had no patience for this. Beverly and I are at the club. We flew in this morning. We need to have a meeting. This family needs to sort this out. The club? I asked, feigning confusion. The country club, he said, as if I were an idiot. Our son-in-law is a member. We're here as his guests. 1 o'clock, in the grill room. We'll discuss Brian's issue. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. He was calling me to the principal's office. Oh, I said. Yes, of course. The country club, 1 o'clock. I'll be there, Richard. Is Brian okay? He's a mess, Richard said with pure disgust. We'll see you at 1. Don't be late. He hung up. I closed the flip phone. I looked at the intricate clock gears laid out on my bench. They thought they were summoning me to their territory. The exclusive club, the symbol of their wealth and power. They thought they were going to sit me down, the poor embarrassing father-in-law in his worn-out jacket, and lay down the law. I picked up a tiny brass gear and held it to the light. What Richard and Beverly didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't just a member of that club. I was member number 7. I had been on the board of directors for 10 years. I had personally approved the plans for the grill room they were sitting in. I smiled. This was going to be even more fun than I thought. I set the gear down and went to find my old jacket, the one with the small paint stain on the cuff. It was perfect for the occasion. I drove my truck into the parking lot of the Oak Valley Country Club. It was as usual full of shiny Bentleys, Teslas, and black German sedans. I parked my old Ford in the farthest spot, the one under the tree that leaks sap. It fit right in. I was wearing my old jacket, the one with the paint stain on the cuff. I got out and walked toward the grand entrance. A new doorman, a young guy in a crisp white uniform, stepped forward. He physically put a hand out to stop me. "Excuse me, sir. The service entrance is around the back." I just looked at him. I didn't say a word. I was about to ask him to call the club manager when an older voice boomed from the doorway. "Mr. Harrison, what a pleasure, sir." It was Frank, the general manager. He'd been here for 20 years. He rushed out, swatting the young doorman's arm down. "Don't be an idiot, Kyle. This is Mr. Harrison. He's practically a founding member." The doorman's face went white. "Sir, I'm so sorry I just waved my hand. "It's fine, Frank. He's new. I'm just meeting some people in the grill room." "Of course, sir. Right this way. A pleasure as always." Frank held the heavy oak door open for me. I walked past the stammering doorman. "Thank you, Frank." I walked through the lobby. The air was thick with the smell of old money and lemon polish. A few older men I knew from the finance committee nodded at me from their leather armchairs. "Paul," they'd say. I'd nod back. "Gentlemen." I walked out onto the veranda, the sunlight bright against the perfect green of the 18th hole. And there they were, Richard and Beverly. They were at the best table, the one overlooking the green. They looked furious. Two expensive half-drunk cocktails sat sweating in front of them, even though it was barely 1 in the afternoon. I walked over. "Richard, Beverly." They both looked up. Their eyes scanned my old jacket, my simple work pants, and their expressions tightened with disgust. They didn't even bother to hide it. "Paul," Richard said, not bothering to stand or shake my hand. "Sit down. We don't have a lot of time. We have a tea time at 2. I sat. A waiter rushed over. "Mr. Harrison, can I get you your usual?" "Just an iced tea, thank you, Miguel." Richard and Beverly stared. The waiter left. Beverly spoke first, her voice as brittle as thin ice. "Paul, thank you for coming." Her tone made it clear she was anything but thankful. "This situation, it's completely unacceptable." She took a long, angry sip of her brightly colored drink. "My daughter," she continued, "is a wreck. She has been crying for 2 days. That beautiful Christmas Eve party she had planned canceled. She's humiliated. All her friends are asking what's wrong." I just nodded my face, a mask of mild concern. "It is a terrible situation, Beverly. Terrible." "He promised her a certain life," Beverly said, jabbing a manicured finger at the table. "He promised her stability. And now, this. He's irresponsible. He's unstable. He is ruining her future." His future, I thought. He is ruining her future. Interesting. Richard leaned forward, placing his thick, bee-ringed hands on the table. He was the one who fancied himself the deal maker, the closer. "All right, let's cut the crap, Paul," he said, his voice low and dismissive. "We're not here to cry about it. We're here for a solution. And let's be perfectly clear. Beverly and I are not bailing him out. We are not throwing good money after bad. That's his mess." "I see," I said softly. "But," he continued, "we do have a solution, a practical one. Megan mentioned your little apartment. It's paid off, isn't it?" I just looked at him. I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. I just let him talk. My silence made him impatient, and he took it as agreement. "Look, Paul, you're his father. It's your responsibility to clean this up. The right thing to do, the only thing to do, is to sell that apartment. Liquidate it. Immediately. Give the money to Brian and Megan so they can pay off this holding company and get on with their lives." I just stared at them. My mind flashed to the home I had shared with Diane, the kitchen where we raised Brian, the walls that held every good memory I had. Sell it. Beverly chimed in, her voice suddenly softening into that fake, syrupy concern that was even more insulting than her anger. "And it's really what's best for you too, Paul," she said, trying to pat my hand. I moved it just in time to pick up my iced tea. "You're getting older. You're, nearly 70. You shouldn't be living alone in that big place anyway. It's a burden. What if you fall? Richard nodded, jumping back in. She's right. You sell the apartment, you give them the cash. With what's left over, you can get a nice clean room at Sunset Meadows or one of those assisted living facilities. You'll be looked after. They'll have nurses. They'll, you know, handle your meals. It's the perfect solution for everyone. They had it all figured out. My eviction, my relocation to a nursing home, my future decided for me over cocktails before their 2 o'clock tea time. I felt that cold, sharp anger building in my chest. But on my face, I just showed confusion. I let my mouth hang open slightly. Sell my home, I stammered, playing my part perfectly. Beverly sighed, exasperated, as if talking to a difficult child. Paul, don't be dramatic. It's just a building. Your son's life is at stake. I was about to reply. I was about to tell them what I thought of their solution. I was about to ask them exactly what they knew about stakes. But then I saw him, walking across the veranda in his $5,000 bespoke suit, looking like he owned the place, which in a way he did. Right on time. I was about to answer. I was about to look Beverly right in her cold, arrogant eyes and ask her very slowly what exactly she knew about burdens. I was about to ask Richard how he defined responsibility. I was about to let the first crack appear in my poor old dad facade. But then I saw him. He was walking across the veranda, moving past the putting green with a quiet authority that made the other members sit up a little straighter. It was Peterson, my lawyer, my advisor. The man who had managed my portfolio for 30 years. He was wearing a custom-tailored dark navy suit that I knew for a fact cost $5,000. His silver hair was perfectly cut. His shoes shined with a deep, rich luster. He looked like what he was, a man who managed billions, a man who presidents had on speed dial. He spotted me, and he smiled, a genuine warm smile. He strode directly to our table. Richard and Beverly, sensing a man of this stature approaching, immediately changed their posture. They sat up, pulling their napkins from their laps, their faces shifting into greedy, hopeful smiles. They were expecting to be introduced. They were expecting to network. Peterson ignored them completely. His eyes were only on me. Paul, he said, his voice full of energy. He clapped me on the shoulder, his expensive Italian wool-clad hand landing right on my old paint-stained jacket. There you are. I'm so glad I caught you. Miguel said you were on the veranda. Richard and Beverly froze. Their smiles evaporated. Their mouths were slightly open. They were looking at Peterson, then at me, then back at Peterson. I could almost hear the gears in their tiny, arrogant minds grinding, smoking, trying to compute this. How does this shark, this pillar of the financial community, know this poor old man in the stained jacket? And why is he smiling at him like that, Mr. Peterson? I said, smiling genuinely for the first time that day. You're early? Just a bit, he said, pulling out his phone. Traffic was light. Are you ready for our board meeting? The rest of the P&D Holdings partners are already setting up in the conference room upstairs. P&D Holdings. I watched the color drain from Richard's face. His tan, his expensive lunch, his arrogance, it all just vanished. He recognized the name from the legal notice. His eyes went wide. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. He wasn't seeing a poor, simple-minded old man anymore. He was seeing a puzzle, a threat. A board meeting. Beverly stammered, her fake sweet voice now just thin and confused. You're on a board, Paul. I just looked at her. I didn't answer her question. I didn't need to. I slowly, deliberately folded my paper napkin and placed it on the table. I stood up. Richard, Beverly, I said, my voice polite but final. You'll have to excuse me. It seems I'm late for my meeting. I turned to Richard, who was still staring at me, his jaw slack. "Thank you for the advice," I said, letting the words hang in the air. "It's always good to be practical. Selling off assets, relocating, those are all very drastic solutions. One should only do that when they have absolutely no other choice. Wouldn't you agree?" Richard just stared. He couldn't speak. I turned to Peterson. "Shall we go?" "After you, Paul," he said. And I walked away. I left them there sitting in stunned silence on the beautiful sunlit veranda. I left them with their half-drunk $15 cocktails and their $500 lunch bill. I left them with the smoking ruin of their entire worldview. As we walked into the clubhouse, Peterson leaned in his voice, a low whisper. "How did it go, Paul?" I just smiled. "I believe," I said, "that the fish are finally starting to question the bait." Richard and Beverly were frozen. They looked at me in my stained jacket, then at Peterson in his $5,000 suit, then back at me. I could see the frantic calculations in their eyes. The two images didn't connect. It was impossible. Richard's voice was a dry croak. A board meeting. You're on a board, Paul." Beverly just stared, her mouth slightly open, her cocktail glass halfway to her lips. "Oh," I said, as if it were nothing. "Yes, just the quarterly review for P&D Holdings. We're using the private conference room upstairs. You know how these things are. Lots of numbers." I let the name just hang in the air. P&D Holdings. I watched Richard's face. The color drained from it. He recognized the name from the legal notice, the name on the letter that was threatening to take his daughter's house. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his confusion turned into something new, something that looked a lot like fear. "Well," I said, placing my napkin on the table, "it was illuminating to speak with you both. Richard, Beverly." Peterson held the door open for me. "After you, Paul." I walked away, leaving them stewing in their shock. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The second piece of the trap had just snapped shut. We weren't actually in a board meeting. The private conference room was just a room I used for lunches, a quiet place with dark wood walls and a single heavy mahogany table. Peterson had a club sandwich in front of him. I had my iced tea. "Well," Peterson said, taking a precise bite, "that was a satisfying little piece of theater." Richard's face looked like he'd swallowed his golf ball. "So, the 30-day clock is ticking. What's next, Paul?" I stared out the window at the perfectly manicured golf course. The green was so perfect it looked fake. "It's not enough," I said quietly. Peterson put his sandwich down. "Not enough, Paul. We're about to take their $1.2 million house. I'd say that's a fairly significant move." I shook my head. "That's just a consequence. It's leverage. It's not the point." I turned to face him. "They kicked me out of Christmas." Peterson frowned. "Yes, I understood that. It was cruel. It was the trigger." "No," I said, leaning forward. "You're missing the why. It's too personal. It's too vindictive. Think about it. Megan is greedy. She's a snob, but she's not stupid. Why would she risk antagonizing me? Why would she push Brian to cut me out, especially when they are so financially overextended? It doesn't make sense." I traced a water ring on the table with my finger. "If anything, this is the time she should be nice to the poor old dad, just in case I have a few $1,000s in my retirement account she can squeeze out of me. This isn't just arrogance, Peterson. This is desperation." I looked my old friend in the eye. She didn't just exclude me from a party. She's trying to erase me. She needed me gone. Not just from the house, but from Brian's life. Why? What is she afraid I'll see? What is she planning that she needs me completely out of the picture for? Peterson's eyes sharpened. He understood. You think there's something else? I know there is, I said. This smells bad. It's not just about paying for a caterer. Megan's in some kind of trouble. The kind of trouble that makes you take insane risks. The kind of trouble that makes you sloppy. I pushed my iced tea away. I want to know what it is. I'm not just foreclosing on a loan. I'm protecting my son even if he's too blind to see he needs it. I want you to find out why she's so desperate. Dig into her finances, her personal life, her debts. I want to know what she's hiding. I want to know why she needed me out of that house on Christmas Day. Peterson took a slow sip of his water. That's a different level of engagement, Paul. That's not business. That's personal. She made it personal. I said, my voice flat and cold as steel. Find it. He nodded slowly. I'll put my best investigator on it. You'll have a report by the end of the week. Peterson's expression didn't change. He simply picked up his water glass and took a slow, methodical sip. He understood me perfectly. He had been my lawyer for 30 years. He knew that when I finally decided to move, I didn't make small moves. Understood, Paul, he said, setting the glass down. You're not just looking for leverage anymore. You're looking for the root. You want to know what's driving the desperation. I want to know what she's capable of, I corrected him. She's already shown me she's willing to throw me away. I want to know what else she's willing to do to my son to get what she wants. I want to know why. Peterson nodded, his face turning serious. I'll put my best man on it. He's a former federal agent. He's discreet. He's expensive. And he is ruthlessly thorough. He finds things people don't even know they've hidden. Good, I said, my voice flat and cold as steel. I want him. I want him on it now. I want a full report by Monday, whatever it costs. Peterson just gave a short nod. I'll make the call before I finish my lunch. Consider it done. He understood. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about finding the truth behind the betrayal, and that truth was about to become my weapon. The report arrived 3 days later. Peterson didn't send it by courier. He brought it himself. That's how I knew it was bad. He walked into my small apartment, the thick spiral-bound report looking absurdly out of place on my simple kitchen table. He wasn't smiling. Paul, he said, skipping the pleasantries, I didn't want to send this over email. You need to read this sitting down. It's that bad, I stated. It wasn't a question. It's worse than we thought, he said. It's not just snobbery, Paul. It's criminal. And it's desperate. He opened the report. The first tab was labeled Financials Megan Harrison. I thought I knew what I'd see. Credit card statements, the BMW lease, the country club dues. I was wrong. She's a gambler, Peterson said, tapping the first page. Online casinos, offshore sports betting. She's been hiding it from Brian for over a year. I looked at the numbers. Page after page of wire transfers. $500 here, $1,000 there, $2,500. The losses were staggering. My God, I whispered. How much? As of this morning, $82,000 in debt. And that's just what he found in the last 6 months. She's been chasing her losses, Paul. She's deep in a hole and digging faster. I shook my head. But how Brian would have noticed? The bank accounts. She's been hiding the bank statements, Peterson said. And it gets worse. Look at Appendix B. I flipped to the back. My stomach clenched. Loan applications. High-interest predatory payday loans. That's Brian's signature, I said, my voice hollow. No, Peterson corrected me. It's a very good forgery, but it's not his. She's been taking out loans in his name to fund her habit. She's not just desperate, Paul. She's committing identity theft. She's facing real jail time and she knows it. This explained the desperation. This explained the $1.2 million house. It wasn't just a home, it was collateral. But it didn't explain Christmas. I turned the page. The next section was labeled Intercepted Communications. My investigator is thorough, Peterson said, a grim look on his face. He recovered deleted text messages between Megan and a contact, a jeweler in the city known for moving high-end items, no questions asked. I read the texts. My hands started to shake. Megan. I'll have them by the 26th. The old man will be gone for Christmas. How much for the full set? Contact. If they're authentic like you say. The full Swiss collection. 10 pieces. I can get you 150, maybe more. Megan, perfect. 150K. That pays off everything. He'll never even know they're gone. I felt the blood drain from my face. My father's watches. It was the only thing I had kept from my own father. A collection of 10 antique Swiss timepieces. I wasn't a collector, but he was. They were locked in my study safe. They were priceless to me. To her, they were $150,000. I flashed back to a conversation from a month ago. Megan looking at the framed photo of my father in my apartment. You know, Paul, she'd said, her voice dripping with that fake concern. Those old watches of your father's, you should really get them serviced. They must be getting rusty just sitting in a safe. It would be a wonderful Christmas surprise for Brian to see them working. Why don't you let me handle it? I know a wonderful appraiser. She wasn't just excluding me. She was clearing the house. She was planning to rob me blind. She needed me gone at her parents' dinner, gone on Christmas Day so she could get into my apartment, get into my safe and sell my father's legacy to pay off her gambling debts. Is that all? I asked. My voice sounded strange, distant. Peterson looked at me, his eyes full of pity. I'm afraid not, Paul. Turn to the last section. Legal inquiries. I turned the page. My hands were trembling so hard, the paper rattled. It was an email chain between Megan and a bottom-feeding lawyer. The kind of lawyer whose face is on late-night TV commercials. I read the first email from Megan to Samuel's law firm. Subject: urgent family matter. Dear Mr. Samuels, my husband and I are extremely concerned about his father's mental well-being. He's 70 years old, and recently his behavior has become erratic. I looked at Peterson. Erratic? Keep reading, he said. He's exhibiting severe paranoia. He hides his money. He refuses to spend anything, even on necessities. He wears old stained clothes and talks about saving for a rainy day that's clearly already here. He seems to be losing his grip on reality. My God. She was using my frugality, my simple, quiet life. She was twisting my choice to live humbly into erratic behavior. We are worried he is a danger to himself. What are our options for a medical conservatorship? We need to protect his assets before he wastes them all. Protect my assets. Not protect me. She was trying to have me declared incompetent. She was trying to have me locked away. She was planning to steal my home, my money, my life, all by painting me as a senile old fool who couldn't be trusted with his own checkbook. This was her plan B. If she couldn't steal the watches, she was going to have me legally erased. She would gain control of all my accounts, and I'd spend the rest of my life in a state-run facility drugged into silence. And Brian, she would have convinced Brian he was doing the right thing, saving his poor crazy old dad from himself. I closed the report. The calm I felt in the workshop was gone. This was a new kind of cold. She didn't just insult me, Peterson, I said, my voice a low, dangerous rumble. She didn't just try to steal from me. She tried to bury me alive. Peterson nodded slowly. Paul, what do you want to do? We can go to the police right now. We have enough here for multiple felony charges. Fraud, conspiracy, identity theft. I stood up. I walked to the window of my small apartment, looking down at the simple, honest street. I thought of Brian, my weak, foolish son being led to slaughter by this viper. No, I said. Not the police, not yet. The police is an ending. I'm not ready for this to end. I turned to Peterson. She thinks I'm a confused old man. She thinks I'm a victim. She's about to find out just how incompetent I am. I picked up my phone. Call Brian. Tell him I need to see him. Here. Alone. Now. I held the report in my hands. The paper felt heavy like a slab of marble. This was no longer about a rude comment. It was no longer about being excluded from a holiday dinner. The small, petty insult of being uninvited from Christmas, that was just the symptom. This was the disease. $80,000 in gambling debts. Forging my son's name. A plan to steal my father's legacy, my one connection to him, and sell it for cash. And she was going to use Christmas Day, a day of family, as her cover to do it. And then, the final chilling piece. The lawyer. The emails. Erratic behavior. Paranoia. Losing his grip. Conservatorship. They weren't just trying to get me out of the party. They were trying to get me out of my life. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent, to have me put away, to lock me in some sterile state-run room where I would be drugged into silence while they drained every account I owned. They were planning to bury me alive. And my son, my weak, foolish son, he was going along with it. She was convincing him it was an act of love, protecting his assets. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, a calm, hard, and terrible clarity. The sadness I felt for Brian's weakness evaporated. The hurt I felt from their insults was gone. All that was left was the engineer. The man who saw a system that was broken, a structure that was rotten to its core, and knew it had to be torn down. This was not a family dispute anymore. This was a criminal conspiracy. Megan didn't just underestimate me. She had miscalculated. She thought I was a soft, simple old man, an obstacle she could just remove. She had no idea. She had no idea of the resources I commanded. She had no idea of the lines she had just crossed. She wanted to erase me. She wanted to declare me incompetent. I was about to show her just how competent I truly am. I picked up my phone. Not the encrypted one. The simple flip phone. The one Brian would recognize. I scrolled to his name. My thumb hovered over the call button. This was no longer about teaching them a lesson. This was about survival. I pressed the button. Call Brian. Tell him I need to see him. Here. Alone. Now. I picked up the simple flip phone from my workbench. The one he knew. My hand was perfectly steady. The anger I felt was so cold it had burned away any trace of weakness. I dialed his number. He picked up on the second ring, his voice still frantic from our last conversation. Dad. Did you call them? Did you talk to Richard and Beverly? What did they say? Can they help, Dad? He was babbling a flood of desperate questions. I cut him off. My voice was not the voice of the confused old man he'd spoken to an hour ago. It was low. It was flat. It was the voice I used in the boardroom when a multi-million-dollar deal was collapsing, and I was the only one who could fix it. The voice that didn't tolerate questions. Stop talking, Brian. The line went silent. He was so shocked by my tone he couldn't speak. Meet me at my apartment, I commanded. What now? Dad, I'm trying to figure out the... Right now, I said. The words were like chips of ice. Do not call Megan. Do not text her. You leave your house, you get in your car, and you come here, alone. Dad, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Did Richard say something? This isn't about Richard. This is about you. You have 30 minutes. But Dad, I need to. Now, Brian. I hung up. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. He would come. For the first time in 5 years, my son had heard my real voice, and he knew this wasn't a request. It was an order. I sat down in my old armchair and waited. The trap was set. Now it was time to confront the first rat. He showed up in 20 minutes. When I opened the door, he looked terrible. He was pale, his eyes were bloodshot, and his expensive sweater was on inside out. He stumbled into my apartment, his hands visibly shaking. "Dad!" He started, his voice cracking. "Dad, I just got off the phone with Richard. He said he saw you at the club. With Peterson, as in the Peterson, the lawyer, and he said something about P&D Holdings. The same name on the foreclosure letter." He was pacing my small living room, running his hands through his hair. "I don't understand. What's going on? How do you know those people?" Richard sounded scared. "Dad, what the hell is happening?" I didn't say anything. I just walked to my kitchen table where the thick, spiral-bound report was waiting. I placed it in front of him. "What's this, Phil?" he asked, his voice full of agitation. "Dad, I don't have time for paperwork. I'm losing my house." "Sit down, Brian," I said. My voice was quiet, but it had a weight to it that made him stop pacing. He looked at me, really looked at me, and the agitation in his eyes turned to a new dawning fear. He sat. "I didn't want to show you this," I said. "I wanted to protect you, but you're not a child anymore, and you need to see who you married." "What? What are you talking about, Megan? What does she have to do with this?" I just tapped the cover of the report. "Read it, Brian." He opened it, his hands clumsy. He stared at the first page, Financials, Megan Harrison. "What is this?" he whispered. "Some kind of bank statement." "Keep reading," I said. I watched his eyes move. I watched the color drain from his face as he saw the transfers to the offshore accounts, the online casinos, the sports betting sites. "No," he whispered. "No, this is wrong. 82,000, no. She doesn't gamble." "She does," I said, "and she's been hiding it from you for over a year." "But how?" His mind was scrambling, trying to find an excuse. "The money. Our accounts. I would have seen." "Appendix B," I said, my voice flat. He fumbled with the pages, his hands shaking so much he tore one slightly. He found the appendix. He saw the loan applications, the high-interest predatory loans, and he saw his own signature at the bottom of each one. I never signed these," he stammered. "I never saw these." He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a horrifying understanding. "Oh God. Oh my God, she forged my name." I just nodded. She stole my identity. She's been funding her addiction with your future, Brian. That's the desperation you've been feeling. That's why she's been so frantic about money." He looked like he was going to be sick. He dropped his head into his hands. 80,000. Oh my God. This is why we're ruined." "No," I said. "That's not why you're ruined. Turn the page. Section 2. Intercepted communications." What? What more can there be?" he sobbed. "Read it." He lifted his head, his face a mask of grease and tears. He read the text messages between Megan and the black market jeweler. "Megan, I'll have them by the 26th. The old man will be gone for Christmas. How much for the full set? Contact 150K, maybe more." Brian frowned, confused. "Full set? What set? What is she? What watches?" He looked up, his eyes meeting mine, and I saw the moment the final terrible piece clicked into place. His eyes darted to the framed photo on my mantelpiece. The photo of my father, his father, standing proudly next to his locked display case. "Grandpa's watches," Brian whispered. The words were so quiet I could barely hear them. She was going to steal Grandpa's watches." He looked at me, his face crumbling. But why she? She told me they needed servicing. She said it would be a nice surprise for me, to get them fixed for Christmas. She needed you gone, Brian. I said, my voice hard. And she needed me gone. That's why I wasn't welcome. She was clearing the house so she could rob me blind, so she could sell your grandfather's legacy to pay off her bookie. No, no, no. He was rocking back and forth. No, she wouldn't. This isn't her. This isn't Megan. It is, son, I said. But that's not the worst part. He looked at me, that his eyes blank with trauma. What? The last section, legal inquiries. He couldn't even pick it up. I reached over, took the report, and opened it to the last page. I put it in front of him. The email chain. He read the words. Extremely concerned about his father's mental well-being. Behavior has become erratic. Paranoia. Losing his grip on reality. What are our options for a medical conservatorship? Protect his assets before he wastes them all. He read it once. Then he read it again, his lips moving silently. He didn't seem to understand. What? What is this? That, I said, is your wife. Emailing a lawyer, trying to have me declared legally insane. She was planning to have me committed, Brian. To put me in a state-run facility, drug me into a stupor, and take control of everything I own. I let the full weight of the truth land on him. She wasn't just stealing from me. She wasn't just insulting me. She was trying to bury me alive. And she was going to use you to do it. She was going to convince you it was an act of love. Brian just broke. He didn't just gasp. He made a deep choking sound like he'd been punched in the gut. He shot back from the table, knocking his chair over, and lunged for the small metal trash can I keep by my desk. He fell to his knees and just dry heaved. Nothing came up, but the sound was raw, agonizing. No, he choked out, spitting onto the floor. No, that's a lie. That's not true. He stayed on his knees, his body trembling, staring at the floor. She said, he stammered, his voice muffled. She said you were forgetting things. She said you left the stove on. I haven't used the stove in 6 months, Brian, I said. My voice was quiet. I used the microwave. She said you were wearing your jacket, inside out, and yelling at the mailman. She said you seemed paranoid. She said she was worried. He was scrambling, trying to make sense of the lies she had fed him. He was trying to reconcile the image of the concerned wife with the monster in the report. She said we needed to protect you, he sobbed. To protect your assets. From scammers. She said you were vulnerable. And you believed her, I said. It wasn't a question. He looked up at me, his face a mess of tears and confusion and a terrible dawning shame. He crawled back to the table, grabbing the report with shaking hands. He read the email from Megan to the lawyer again. Erratic, paranoia, losing his grip, conservatorship. Oh God, he whispered. Oh God. She was using me. She was using my concern. She wasn't worried. She was planning. He finally understood. He finally saw that he was the tool. He was the key she was going to use to unlock my life and throw me away. He fell back against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, the report clutched in his hand. I went with her, he confessed. The words were so quiet I barely heard them. What did you say, Sultan? I went with her, he said louder this time, his voice cracking open. To the lawyer last week. She said it was just to ask questions, just to understand our options in case you got worse. He looked at me, his eyes begging for, I don't know what. Forgiveness, absolution. I swear, Dad, I didn't think she would do anything. I thought we were being responsible. She had me convinced. She made me believe I was a good son. She made me believe I was protecting you. He slammed his fist against the floor, a weak, pathetic thud. What have I done? He whispered, not to me, but to the room, to the universe. Oh God, what have I done? I just stood there. I didn't move to comfort him. I didn't offer him a kind word. I just watched my son collapse under the weight of his own weakness. He had made his choice. Now he would live with it. It was December 28th. 3 days after the Christmas I wasn't invited to. I was sitting in Peterson's main conference room. This wasn't my simple apartment. This was a room designed to intimidate. It was on the 40th floor, with a single massive mahogany table that felt like it was carved from a single ancient tree. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. I sat at the head of the table. I was still wearing my simple clothes khakis and a button-down shirt. But in this room, sitting in that chair, they didn't look old. They looked like a statement. To my right sat Peterson, looking impossibly sharp, a stack of spiral-bound reports in front of him. To my left sat Brian. He was a ghost. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He was just a hollow shell. His eyes red and empty, staring at the polished surface of the table. He had said maybe 10 words since he'd read the report. At exactly 2 o'clock, the heavy doors opened. Megan walked in first. She wasn't the hysterical crying woman I imagined. She was a woman at war. She was wearing a red power suit that screamed lawyer. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Behind her were Richard and Beverly, looking smug and angry, like they were here to defend their daughter's honor. And with them was their lawyer, Mr. Samuels, the same man from the emails. He was a small, weasel-like man with a shiny suit and a briefcase he probably bought on sale. He was radiating a false, slimy confidence. They sat on the opposite side of the massive table. It felt like a battlefield. Megan didn't wait for introductions. She leaned forward, her eyes glittering with a venom I knew well. "All right, Paul," she snapped, her voice echoing in the large room. "I don't know what kind of pathetic little game you think you're playing, but it's over." Her lawyer Samuels cleared his throat and opened his cheap briefcase. "My clients, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, are here as a courtesy. They are prepared to file a countersuit for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress regarding this fraudulent foreclosure notice." I just looked at them. I didn't say a word. I just let her talk. Megan mistook my silence for weakness, again. "And another thing," she said, her voice rising. "We are proceeding with the petition for a conservatorship. We have all the proof we need. Brian has signed the affidavit." Brian flinched as if he'd been slapped. "He agrees with me," she spat. "He agrees that you are no longer competent, that you are a danger to yourself. Your little stunt at the club, calling that lawyer." She sneered at Peterson, who just watched her, his face impassive. "That just proves our point. You're having paranoid delusions." She smiled a thin, triumphant, ugly smile. "So here's the deal. You are going to sign over power of attorney to Brian. You are going to stop this nonsense with the house. And you are going to go quietly to the assisted living facility we've chosen for you. If you do that, we might consider dropping the countersuit." She sat back, crossing her arms. She thought she had won. She thought she had me cornered. I looked at Brian. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Peterson. He gave me a very slight, almost imperceptible nod. It was time. Megan didn't wait for Peterson to speak. She leaned forward, placing her perfectly manicured hands on the polished mahogany. She was the picture of an offended, powerful woman. "All right, Paul," she snapped, her voice sharp and echoing slightly in the large, quiet room. "I don't know what kind of pathetic little game you think you're playing, but it's over." I just watched her. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Her lawyer Samuels cleared his throat, a small, wet sound. "My clients, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison," he began, his voice oily, "are here today as a courtesy. They are prepared to file a countersuit for harassment, emotional distress, and predatory financial practices regarding this fraudulent foreclosure notice." "Fraudulent?" Peterson asked, his voice genuinely curious. It was the first time he'd spoken. "Of course it's fraudulent," Megan jumped in, her voice rising. "This P&D Holdings nonsense. It's an intimidation tactic. It's illegal. You can't just buy someone's mortgage and then call it in. That's... Well, it's illegal." Samuels nodded. "We will be filing for an immediate injunction. And that's not all we're here to discuss." Megan took over again. She was enjoying this. She thought she was in control. "We are here, Paul, because we are concerned about you." The word concerned dripped with venom. "Your behavior has become, well, erratic, deeply unstable. First you run away from a simple family discussion. Then you hire this shark," she gestured at Peterson, "to send us threatening letters. Then your little stunt at the club. Richard and Beverly told us all about it. Colluding with lawyers claiming to be on a board." She laughed, a short, ugly sound. "It's a classic paranoid delusion, Paul. A fantasy of grandeur. And frankly, it proves our point. You are clearly not well." I looked at Brian. He was staring at his own hands, which were clasped so tightly on the table his knuckles were white. He was a statue of shame. Beverly, Megan's mother, chimed in, her voice oozing fake sympathy. "Paul, dear, we just want what's best for you. What you did at the club, it was a cry for help. We see that. You're clearly not capable of managing your own affairs anymore. You're becoming a danger to yourself and to others." "That's right," Richard added, his voice a low growl. "You're a liability. My daughter and my son-in-law don't deserve this stress. They are trying to build a life and they're stuck worrying about what you'll do next. Will you burn your apartment down? Will you give all your money away to some TV preacher? We can't let that happen." Megan leaned in, her eyes narrowing. This was the killing blow. This was the moment she had been waiting for. "So here's what's going to happen," she said, her voice dropping to a low, commanding tone. "We are proceeding with the petition for a medical conservatorship. We have all the proof we need. Brian has already signed the initial affidavit." I watched my son flinch as if he'd been slapped. But he didn't deny it. He had signed it. He had signed his father's life away. "He agrees with me," Megan spat, lying right to my face. "He agrees that you are no longer competent to make your own decisions, financial or medical. He's worried sick about you." "So," she said, sitting back with a triumphant smirk, "here is our offer, a very generous one considering the circumstances." Samuels, the lawyer, slid a single piece of paper across the vast table. "My clients are prepared to drop the countersuit for harassment. And," Megan continued, "we will handle this foreclosure nonsense. We'll find a way to make it disappear." I just looked at the paper. It was a power of attorney agreement. A full, irrevocable power of attorney. "You are going to sign that," she said. "You will sign over full financial and medical power of attorney to your son Brian, my husband. And then," Beverly added, "you will agree quietly to be assessed at the assisted living facility we have chosen for you. It's a very lovely place. Sunset Meadows. You'll be looked after." "You do that," Megan finished, and we might consider dropping this whole incompetence petition. We'll handle it, as a family, quietly. But if you refuse, if you fight us, Samuels chimed in, we will proceed with the full force of the law. We will have you declared incompetent by the court. We will freeze your assets, and you will be placed in a facility whether you like it or not. The choice is yours, Mr. Harrison. Sign the paper or we will have you committed. She sat back, crossing her arms. She thought she had won. She had just laid out her entire criminal conspiracy right here in front of God, her parents, her broken husband, and my billion-dollar lawyer. I looked at Brian. He was pale as a sheet, staring at the power of attorney document, like it was a death warrant. I looked at Megan. She was smiling. That thin, ugly, victorious smile. I looked at Peterson. He gave me a very slight, almost imperceptible nod. It was time. Peterson just smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a surgeon who has just opened the patient and confirmed the diagnosis. Will you? He said, his voice calm and polite. You'll have him committed. You'll file for harassment. You'll make this foreclosure disappear. He leaned back in his massive leather chair, steepling his fingers. That's a fascinating legal strategy, Mr. Samuels, especially from a woman who is at this very moment facing multiple felony charges. Megan's lawyer Samuels froze. I beg your pardon, my client is the victim here. Is she? Peterson said. He reached down to a black briefcase by his chair, a briefcase I hadn't even noticed. He pulled out a second spiral-bound report. It was identical to the one I had given Brian. He slid it across the 30 feet of polished mahogany. It glided silently and stopped perfectly in front of Megan. You're right, Mrs. Harrison, Peterson said. I'm not just a lawyer. I am also on the board of P&D Holdings, but I also, on behalf of my client, Mr. Harrison, hired a private investigator. You see, we were concerned about your erratic behavior. And what we found, well, it's all in there. Megan stared at the report as if it were a bomb. Go ahead, Peterson encouraged. Open it, or perhaps you'd prefer I summarize. Megan's hands were shaking. She couldn't touch it. Very well, Peterson said. He picked up his own copy. Let's start with Section 1. Financials, Megan Harrison. It seems you have a bit of a hobby. Online casinos, offshore sports betting. My investigator has tracked $82,000 in gambling debts, all accrued in the last 6 months. You've been chasing your losses, haven't you, Megan? Megan's lawyer Samuels turned and stared at his client. Megan, is that true? Beverly. Her mother gasped. 80,000. Oh, it gets better. Peterson continued, his voice as smooth as ice. To fund this habit, you've been quite creative. Appendix B, 3 high-interest payday loans. The problem is you couldn't get them in your own name, could you? So you used your husband's. My investigator has confirmed with a handwriting expert that the signatures on these applications totaling another $30,000 are forgeries. That's identity theft, wire fraud, multiple counts. Samuels, the lawyer, audibly groaned. He was starting to sink in his chair. He was no longer a shark. He was a minnow in a tank with a great white. But still, Peterson said, that's not enough money, is it? Which brings us to Section 2. Intercepted communications. You needed a big score, something to clear the slate. He read from the page. A text message from you, Megan, to let's call him a specialty jeweler downtown. I'll have them by the 26th. The old man will be gone for Christmas. How much for the full set? I watched Brian's face. He knew what was coming. He closed his eyes, his shame a physical force. The jeweler's reply, Peterson read. If they're authentic like you say, the full Swiss collection, 10 pieces, I can get you 150, maybe more. $150,000 for Mr. Harrison's antique watch collection, the one he inherited from his father. Your plan, it seems, was to use the Christmas holiday, the one you so cruelly excluded him from, as your cover to rob him blind. Richard Megan's father, who had been silent, finally spoke. His voice was a low, horrified rumble. Megan, what is he talking about, you? You were going to steal from him. Beverly looked like she was going to faint. The watches. You told Brian they needed servicing. Megan was trapped. Her eyes darted from her parents to her lawyer to me. She was hyperventilating. This is slander. You have no proof. You're making this up. Am I? Peterson said. He turned the page. Then let's get to my favorite part. Section 3. Legal inquiries. This is the masterpiece. He looked directly at Samuel's lawyer to lawyer. This is an email chain between your client and you, Mr. Samuels, from 2 weeks ago. Samuels went pale. Peterson read Megan's words aloud, his voice echoing in the silent room. Dear Mr. Samuels, my husband and I are extremely concerned about his father's mental well-being. His behavior has become erratic. He is exhibiting severe paranoia. He hides his money. He refuses to spend anything. He seems to be losing his grip on reality. We need to know our options for a medical conservatorship. We need to protect his assets. Peterson closed the report. It's all here. The conspiracy to commit fraud, Tufum. The plan to have a 70-year-old man falsely committed to an institution, to strip him of his rights, his dignity, and his property. All to pay off your gambling debts. He leaned forward. So, no, Mrs. Harrison. We will not be dropping the foreclosure, and you will not be proceeding with your petition, because you are a criminal, and we have all the proof we need. Megan's face crumpled. The power suit, the tight hair, the arrogant mask, it all dissolved. She was just a cornered, terrified, guilty woman. Her lawyer Samuels was already packing his cheap briefcase, trying to get as far away from her as possible. Richard and Beverly just stared at their daughter. The silence was absolute. Finally, Richard spoke. His voice was no longer arrogant. It was just dead. Megan, he whispered. You gambled $80,000. Peterson watched Megan's lawyer Samuels practically run out of the room. He didn't even say goodbye to his client. He just fled. Megan was sputtering, her face a blotchy red. It's not. I was going to pay it back. I just needed a little time. He set me up. This is entrapment. She pointed a shaking finger at me. This is his fault. He sent that foreclosure notice just to humiliate me. You can't do this. We'll fight you. We'll get a new loan. We'll sue P&D Holdings, whoever they are. Peterson, who had been watching this meltdown with the mild interest of a scientist observing a chemical reaction, finally spoke. Actually, Mrs. Harrison, he said, his voice calm and polite, we've been over this. The foreclosure notice isn't entrapment. It's a standard legal business proceeding. You can't foreclose, she yelled. We'll sue. Sue whom exactly? Peterson interrupted. He leaned back in his massive leather chair. You see, you keep referring to Mr. Harrison here as if he's some outside party, a bitter old man playing a game. You're fundamentally misunderstanding the situation. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Mr. Harrison isn't threatening you with a foreclosure. He isn't trying to intimidate you. Peterson paused, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of the moment build. He owns you. Megan just stared. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. What? What did you say, Cha? P&D Holdings, Mrs. Harrison, Peterson said, as if explaining to a very slow child. The holding company you've been cursing. The entity that holds the $450,000 note on your $1.2 million home. It's an LLC, a private one. Richard, her father, was leaning forward, his face pale. P. P and D. What? What does that stand for? I answered him myself. My first words in 10 minutes. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a razor. Paul, I said. And Diane. Brian let out a small, broken sound like he'd been punched. He finally understood. He looked at me, his eyes full of a new, horrifying comprehension. Megan's eyes darted between me and Peterson. The arrogance, the anger, the panic, it all collapsed at once. All that was left was the raw, primal terror of a trapped animal. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. We pay Bank of America. Bank of America is our servicer, Peterson said, closing his final report. They collect your check, take a small fee, and wire the rest to us, to him. For the past 2 years, Mr. Harrison has been your bank. He has been the only reason you have that house. He saved you from foreclosure 2 years ago, and he did it in secret. Megan was shaking her head, the tears starting to flow. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage at being outplayed. You, my God, you've been watching us. And now, Peterson said, standing up, he's done. He looked at his watch, a very thin, very expensive Patek Philippe, the same model my father used to wear. The demand note was called, he announced. The 30-day grace period, which we generously extended before this meeting, expired about an hour ago. The eviction order has already been signed by a judge. You have 72 hours to vacate the property. 72, Beverly whispered, her hand at her throat. That's correct, Peterson said. By noon on December 31st, New Year's Eve, the bank, which is to say Mr. Harrison, will be taking possession of the house and all its contents to be auctioned. This meeting is over. The room was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then Megan exploded. It wasn't a cry. It was a scream. A raw, guttural shriek of pure, unadulterated rage. You! She screamed, launching herself up from the chair. It scraped back, screeching against the polished floor. Her entire body was shaking her face, a terrifying mask of fury. You monster! She spat at me. You bastard! You sat there. You sat there in my house in your dirty old coat, eating our food. You let me. She couldn't even finish the sentence. She was choking on her own venom. You set us up, she shrieked, her voice cracking. This whole thing, the foreclosure, the meeting, you've been planning this, you trapped us, you wanted this, you wanted us to fail, you wanted us to be on the street. She looked at her parents, Richard and Beverly, who were staring at her speechless. He trapped us, he's been lying to us for years, pretending to be this pathetic old man, this burden. She laughed, a high hysterical sound that had no humor in it. A burden, my God, you let us worry about you. You let me think. You let me think I was the one in control. She slammed her fists on the mahogany table. You liar. This isn't justice. This is sick. It's sick. You're a sick old man and you're enjoying this. You're enjoying ruining us. I just sat there. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just watched her. My silence, my absolute calm was like gasoline on the fire. It was driving her insane. Because she finally understood that she had never, not for 1 second, been in control. And then her fury, finding no purchase on my granite calm, turned to the only other target in the room. The weak one. The one she had always been able to control. She spun around to face my son. Brian was still sitting there, frozen, his face as white as a sheet, staring at the table. And you, she hissed. Her voice dropped, becoming even more dangerous. You knew. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Brian didn't look up. He couldn't. You knew, she screamed, lunging at the table, her face just inches from his. When did you find out? When he showed you that report. You've been sitting here this whole time, knowing you let me walk in here. You let me. She was trembling, pointing a shaking finger at his face. You let him do this to me. To us, you're his puppet. You're pathetic. You're a weak, spineless coward. Brian flinched, but still didn't look up. Say something, she shrieked. Are you just going to sit there? Are you going to let him throw us out on the street? Are you going to let him destroy your wife, your family? He's my father, Megan. Brian's voice was a choked whisper, but it was the first thing he'd said. He's not your father, she screamed. He's a snake, and you chose him. You chose this miser, this liar. Over me, your wife, you're siding with him against me. She looked around wildly at her parents, at Peterson, at me. He's my husband. He's supposed to be on my side. You can't just divorce me by foreclosing on me. That's not how this works. She grabbed Brian's arm, her nails digging in. Brian, tell them you're with me. Tell this old bastard to stop this. Tell him to give us back our house now. The room was silent. Everyone was watching Brian. He so slowly lifted his head. He looked at her hand on his arm, her red nails digging into his suit. He looked at her face contorted with rage and greed. And then he looked at me. For the first time in years, I saw my son. Not the scared, weak man-child, but the man I had raised. He looked at me and his eyes were full of shame, but also a final, terrible, heartbreaking resolve. He had made his choice. Everyone was watching Brian. Megan, her face twisted and ugly, her nails still digging into his arm. Her parents, Richard and Beverly, finally silent, their smugness replaced by a dawning horror. Peterson, impassive, a neutral observer. And me. I was watching my son. He was still looking down at his hands. I could see his shoulders trembling. Megan was still screaming at him. Brian, answer me! Are you a man? Or are you his little boy? Tell him. For a second, I thought he would break. I thought he would just dissolve into tears and apologize, beg her to forgive him, beg me to stop it all. I thought the weakness had finally consumed him. And then very slowly, he lifted his head. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at her parents. He looked at Megan. He looked at her hand on his arm, at her red, sharp nails. And with a calm, deliberate motion, he reached over with his other hand, unhooked her fingers one by one, and pushed her hand away. Then he stood up. He wasn't the ghost who had walked into the room. He wasn't the hollow shell. He stood up straight, and for the first time in his entire life, I saw him stand tall. He looked solid. His voice, when it came, wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a yell. It was cold. It was dead. It was a voice I had never heard from him before. You lied to me, he said. Megan stopped. The hysteria froze on her face. What? What did you say to me? I said, Brian repeated, his voice level. You lied to me. For years. You've been lying to me every single day. Brian, baby, what are you talking about? She tried, her voice shifting instantly into that sweet, manipulative tone. He's put these ideas in your head. He's poisoning you against me. Can't you see what he's doing? Brian just shook his head, a slow, sad motion. No, Megan. He didn't have to poison me. You did. The report, I read the report. It's all true, isn't it? Report? What report? That's just garbage. He's a bitter old man. $82,000, Brian said. Megan stopped. $82,000 in gambling debts. Is that true? Brian, I can explain. I, I had a run of bad luck. I was going to win it back. You forged my name, he said, his voice dropping even lower. On loan applications. You took out $30,000 in my name. I had to, she shrieked, the mask slipping. To cover the payments, to protect you, so you wouldn't worry. You were going to steal my grandfather's watches, Brian continued, his voice relentless like a hammer. On Christmas Day, while I was at your parents' dinner, you were going to rob my father while I was helping you. Exclude him. No, she screamed. That's not. I was just getting them appraised. For insurance, I was protecting our assets. Our assets. Brian finally laughed. A dry, horrible, broken sound. We don't have any assets, Megan. We have debt. We have this house that isn't even ours. A house he owns. He pointed at me. And you, he said, his voice finally breaking, but with rage, not sadness. You were going to have him committed. That was the one. That was the one that broke him. You sat next to me in his apartment. You held my hand. You told me he was paranoid. You told me he was getting worse. You made me sign that paper. You made me betray my own father. You were going to put him in a home so you could pay off your bookie. Brian, she screamed, her eyes wild. He's the monster. He's the one destroying us. He did this, not me. Brian just looked at her for a long, terrible moment. The silence stretched. No, he said, his voice suddenly, finally, completely empty. He just held up a mirror. You destroyed us, Megan. You did. He took a step back from the table. He looked at her parents. He looked at me. I'm done, he whispered. Brian.